Hey, welcome. So here's a big question for you. How can a single, unified divine being have so many different names? I mean, it kind of sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? Well, today we're going to dig into a really fascinating framework from our source material that actually turns this whole puzzle into a profound way of understanding. So let's break it down.
Right. So that's the central puzzle right there. And what our source text argues is that, these multiple names, they're not a contradiction at all. Actually, a better way to think about it is like they're a set of keys. Each individual key unlocks a different door, a different aspect, a different way of understanding one single unified reality.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First, we'll get into that core puzzle of oneness. Then, we're going to dive into 3 different categories of divine names, some that are totally exclusive to God, and others that we can actually relate to, using ideas like lordship and kingship. And to wrap it all up, we'll see how this whole framework turns into a really practical, threefold path for connection.
All right, let's start at the very beginning, with the foundation, this whole puzzle of oneness. Because, to really get a handle on all these different names, we first have to wrap our heads around the core idea of a single, indivisible source.
So the big idea here is that these names aren't like separate beings or anything like that. A really great way to think about it is to picture a single perfect diamond. Each name is just a different facet on that diamond, and each facet catches the light in a slightly different way, revealing something unique and brilliant about the whole thing. It's like having a bunch of different windows, but they all look into the exact same room.
Okay, so how does this framework actually work? Well, it all starts with the most fundamental category, what we'll call God's exclusive names. These are the attributes that are tied directly to the proper name for God that we find in the source text, which is Allah.
And the key word here is exclusivity. This is absolutely crucial. According to our source, there are just some qualities that are so foundational, so essential to the divine being, that they belong to God and only God, period. They literally define the nature of the divine, and nothing in creation can share or replicate.
Okay, let's take a perfect example, the attribute of the Creator. This is all about absolute singularity. The source really makes a point of this. It's not about being a creator, like an artist who creates a painting. No, this is about being the one, single, unique originator of everything that exists. And that kind of role, well, it's exclusive by its very definition.
Here's another really powerful one, the absolute merciful. Now, the source defines this as something way beyond just simple kindness. It's talking about a mercy that is so vast, so all-encompassing, that it touches every single part of creation with 0 exceptions. And that sheer scale, that totality of mercy, the text argues, is another one of those qualities that can only belong to the divine.
So this whole framework gives us these 3 distinct categories. You can see here in that first column under God or Allah, we've got those exclusive attributes we've just been talking about, the Creator, the Absolute Merciful, and a few others. But now take a look at the next 2 columns, Lord and King. These are a different story. Let's find out.
And that brings us to the next part, lordship and kingship. Now this is where, for me, the framework gets really interesting. Because here we shift gears from attributes that are totally exclusive to God to ones that can actually be reflected out in the world and even in us.
And that right there is the key distinction. See, unlike that absolute uniqueness of the Creator, the qualities of a Lord or a King are things we can actually find, at least to some small degree, in creation. And what this does is it builds a kind of bridge for us to understand, because these are concepts we can actually relate to from our own human experience.
So what exactly does Lord mean in this context? Well, the source defines it through the ideas of nurturing and development. Think about a guardian or a parent, someone who raises you, guides you, and helps you grow. That's the idea. And in this framework, God is the highest Lord, the absolute ultimate nurturer of everything and everyone.
Okay, so what about the attribute of the king? This one is all about ownership and authority. I mean, a person could be the king of their own home, or maybe their own business, right? Managing that little domain. But the source refers to God as the King of Kings, the ultimate authority, not just over one little domain, but over literally all of them.
Okay, so this brings us to our final section, and this is really where it all clicks into place. Because what we've been talking about isn't just some abstract theological classification system. Our source presents it as a practical guide, a threefold path for how you can actually relate to the divine.
So why does this matter? What's the big deal?
Well, it matters because each one of these categories corresponds to a completely different way of engaging with the divine. It takes this abstract theology and turns it into a practical roadmap for knowing, approaching, and interacting. And here it is, the core takeaway of this entire framework. It's a three-step process. First, you know God's unique essence by reflecting on those exclusive attributes, the ones under Allah, like the Creator. Second, you approach God by connecting through those relatable attributes of lordship, seeing God as the nurturer. And finally, you submit to God by acknowledging the attributes of kingship, recognizing the ultimate final authority.
And the source text really ties this all together beautifully with this powerful phrase. It praises God as the Lord of the great throne, and you can hear how that combines both kingship, throne, and lordship, Lord, and also as Lord of the worlds, which is just this perfect reminder of that universal, all-encompassing reality we started with.
And so that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about, doesn't it? If you frame the divine through these qualities, some that are totally unique and others that are relatable, does that actually make a single, all-powerful being more accessible? Could it change the very nature of how someone relates to the divine? It's a really powerful way to think about a timeless mystery. Thanks so much for joining me today.